gone insane. An upside-down civilization that cannot be real. A world of madness and terror.
It's the Dana Gould Hour.
Hi, everybody. This is Dana, and thanks for downloading the show. And thank you to everyone for making the first show such a great success. In all sincerity, it was terrific. All the people who posted reviews, we super appreciate it. Now, onto this show. The estimable Ken Daly is by my side. We have Paul Greenberg, John Ennis. Danielle Phelan is making her first appearance on the show. Edward Pepitone is on assignment. We're going to get him back as often as he's willing. And that's what I want to do. I'd like the show to have more of a family of voices that you come to know. Let's create an opinion collage, shall we? In the way that a jazz song has often been called a sound painting. But we have a great guest today, also named Ed Crasnick, a really wonderful comedian and a great friend of mine. Ed Crasnick, possibly the yin to Eddie Pepitone's yang. And let me just say right out of the gate, I did not anticipate to say the phrase Eddie Pepitone's yang at any time in this life, but there it is. On the other hand, Ed Crasnick, physically a monster. He is the hideous sun demon. Eddie looks like if a burn victim and a shark attack survivor got together and had a baby. Now here's how you know that's not the truth. If you're a burn victim, your baby doesn't come out burnt. That's not handed down genetically, nor are shark wounds. And if you are a shark attack survivor, the one thing you're not going to say when they pull you out of the ocean is, before I go to the hospital, please, I need to have sex with a burn victim so we can have a hideous baby. So now you know that Ed is a handsome, dashing fellow, and I am a liar. People who paid close attention to the show last week realized that the Dana Gould Hour clocked in at 57 minutes. So let's be up front. The show is about nothing if not lies. But I really hope you enjoy it right after this.
Welcome to Political Talk with two guys from Boston. A working man's look at the socio-political issues of our day. And now, Political Talk with two guys from Boston.
Hi, I'm Johnny Condon.
Yeah, this is Robbie Sullivan.
This is Political Talk.
Yeah, it is.
We work for Bevilacqua Air Conditioning and Heating Repair at Bevilacqua.
We're cool if you're cool.
Hey, speaking of crazy pieces of equipment, Iran is in the news because they want to get a nuclear weapon. Here's an interesting thing. Apparently, they can't stop them from having a nuclear weapon, but 5 of their top nuclear scientists have been assassinated in the past couple of months.
Yeah, that's scary. Probably one day the guy's like bragging in a bar, well, this is what I do. How are you, sweetheart? And the next day he's dead.
The next thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire.
Yeah, exactly. He's over it.
My theory on that is that those guys are hard to find, because you know Billy Taft?
Yeah, I know Billy.
He works at Raytheon.
Oh, no kidding.
Doing whatever.
When they still call someone Billy and they're in their 40s, that's weird.
He's in his 50s now.
Yeah, that's even weirder.
Here's the scary part.
At what age do you turn to Bill? Go ahead.
You turned to Bill right before, sir,
Yeah.
you're drooling, sir.
I think at some point someone's got to say, why don't we call you Bill, Billy?
I see him at the Honeydew Donut Shop at about 5:30 every morning. He gets
geez. At least
he gets a
up.
crull and a large black
Now,
coffee.
does he get up or is he still up?
Well, I wonder, but then he goes into Raytheon and he's there all day.
No kidding.
Doing whatever.
Yeah.
He just grunts. You know what he does? You know how you know he's crazy? How you can tell a fucking spaz?
Yeah.
He doesn't move his arms when he walks.
Yeah, that's weird. Also, he looks like he's got his beard grown in between his beard. Like, that's weird, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he
his
didn't
beard,
shave one day, then he didn't shave the next day, but it's a different beard. It's very weird.
His beard has its own beard.
That's what I mean.
His beard has a mini
beard. It does.
beard.
It feels like
Yeah.
that.
Oh.
It's weird. I mean, I didn't touch it, but I've seen him, and he doesn't know who I am, but I've seen him, and I'm definitely like, oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah. There's a very little difference between these super scientists
Yeah.
and fucking whack jobs.
Oh, yeah.
There's like 2 molecules between Alan Oppenheimer and a guy walking down the turnpike in the median, full loading an adult diaper selling a bag of oranges.
Yeah, no kidding. Good luck selling them, too.
How does he get that job? You drive by those buildings on 128, and they don't even have doors.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you go into got an application?
I can't get an ID for Six Flags.
I have a hard time buying lady razors. I had to go get a lady Bic for my
For
mother.
what? Oh, for
I
your
had to
mother.
get a lady Bic for my mother.
That's
and I just
weird
feel like,
anyway,
I
yeah.
always got to tell them, like, this ain't for me.
Yeah, you got to say something, because
Like-
otherwise they're looking at you like, what are you shaving with this?
Exactly. I was like, if I wanted to shave my legs, I'd still use a Good News. Like, I'd use a man's razor.
Yeah, well, my friend
You
went on
know.
a cruise ship to Martinique,
Uh-huh.
and he was telling me that, the people over there go to these beaches and they're all shaved.
Oh, yeah.
Not just women,
Oh,
men
I don't
too.
understand it.
What the hell's that about? Why
Yeah.
would you shave? We're from Boston.
If God had wanted man to not have a hairy back, my elbows would go both fucking ways.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
they
Wait,
don't.
what?
Do you watch Steven Tyler?
Oh, yeah.
When I first saw Steven Tyler on American Idol, the first thing I thought was Weekend at Bernie's is a TV show now.
Yeah, because he doesn't seem well.
He looks like Jim Morrison now.
Yeah, well, with Mick
you
Jagger,
dug him
he's
up.
got someone else. When they do those big stadium shows, he's in having a smoke, and there's some other moron running across the top of the stadium. It's not
Yeah.
him.
No.
Are you out of your mind?
He's
Why do
a
you think they have him a
million and
mile
six.
in the sky?
He's
There's
a
someone
million and
else while
six.
he's taking a break. He's having a, what do you call it, a breakfast bar or some shit.
Have you ever seen a really old guy naked in the shower
I
at
have
the
not
gym?
looked.
When you go to the Rolling Stones,
Yeah.
and Mick Jagger's on stage and he looks fantastic. Underneath that, he looks like that naked old lady in The Shining that gets out of the tub and is coming after Jack Nicholson. That's the big plastic surgery thing, is when chicks with tramp stamps get old, they got to get their tramp stamp hauled back up over their jean
Oh,
waist.
jeez, that's weird to look at.
Because I'll think of that, and you know what I'll do about it? Nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody like Billy fucking Taft will make $1 billion on that because he works in a building with no doors. Here's my problem.
Yeah, what's your problem?
Like, some guy will drive by a Bay Banks
Yeah.
and look at the door and think, I should walk into that Banks and take out a small loan and use that loan to microfinance 17 small businesses and then amortize my percentage of their profits to fund a larger business. Over 20 years, I'll have like a giant business. And I'll drive by the same Bay Banks, I'll look at the door and I'll think, I wonder if they'd pay me to clean that door.
It's all about the way we think. We can't think ourselves into right action, but we can act ourselves into right thinking.
Oh, Jesus, that's some heavy.
Write that down. I forget.
Is that
I'll
a
forget
Doors
it in
lyric?
Half an hour. I think it's a bumper sticker I seen this morning.
Well, that's all you need to know about Iran and their nuclear aspirations. I'm
Yeah.
Johnny Condon.
Yeah, I'm Robbie Sullivan.
We'll see you next time on Political Talk.
Yeah, we will.
Political Talk with two guys from Boston.
George Meyer wrote a line for The Simpsons where Lisa goes out and she's trying to get her dad to look up at the constellations and the stars. And he says, yeah, it's really a shame that God isn't alive to see this. Now, there's a guy who is an atheist.
I did a radio show called The Ardent Atheist.
Yeah, I did it, yeah.
And I tried to back off it because what I don't believe is I have any idea what it is. But that doesn't preclude the fact that something could exist. My dog can't conceive of my computer, but they're both very real. So It is possible. I just don't think it's anything that a human mind could conceive of.
Well, that's it. It's people trying to make sense of that which they cannot understand with the brain.
Welcome back to Blowjob Talk. How did we get onto this subject?
We took a little detour.
We started off about how you get a blowjob at a drive-in when you're in a convertible, and somehow we ended up here.
That's what happens with all blowjobs. They end up with this ethereal sort of, do I exist? Especially the way I receive them.
Blowjob Talk, celebrating our 34th year here on CBS. We're still brought to you by Mop and Glow, and that's not a coincidence. There's a really funny actor, and I'm not going to say his name only because he might be embarrassed that I told this story, but he hates the Beatles because he was in a car with a girl, and things were progressing very well for him when he was a teenager, and she was performing a blowjob on him. I don't know how else to put it politely.
Yeah.
And he thought, this is going to get even better. And someone's knocking at the door came on. And it ruined the moment completely.
Yeah.
And she was like, I love this song. And that was it.
And he not only hated Paul McCartney and Wings, but also the Beatles.
He put it straight to the Beatles. That's what I admire about that. He took it right past the obvious to the original source.
And took the greatest band in the history of music and said, not only can I enjoy them, I will kill anyone who does, which is everyone.
Much like the way I blame everything on my father's balls.
Well, you're not wrong. I've never met your father's balls, but I will tell you that that would be a great name for a bar. The thing with the Beatles with me was my sister, everything in her room was Beatle heaven.
Beatle heaven is half full. A lot of people think it's half empty, but I'm an optimist.
It's half full. It's half full. She would spoke in a fake English accent up until she was 27. She was Patty
awesome.
Boyd. She spoke in a fake English accent, and during a Beatle concert at Suffolk Downs, went up on stage and tried to cut off a lock of Paul McCartney's hair. Then lied about it, pressed it in a Beatle ring binder to this day, where I believe it's really Paul McCartney's hair. And I want to believe it.
You know, my friend Danielle has the greatest story about meeting Paul McCartney. I'll just let her tell it.
Me and my friend were just hiking in Sedona, Arizona, because her mom lives out there. So I'm walking with my friend, and we're hiking along, and this other group, about 6 people, come around this big rock formation and walk right in front of us. And there are these pale, skinny legs in these ugly cargo shorts, and I look up, and they're all attached to Paul McCartney, right in front of us. We just freeze dead. And he's with all of these just British hiking people. Now, remember, we're out on a hiking trail. If I was at some big museum or a nightclub in London, I would almost half expect this, but I'd at least think it was plausible. But I'm hiking in the middle of nowhere. It's like you're sitting in a shopping mall and a unicorn walks by. It's just not what you're expecting to see. So later on, me and my friend are at this Mexican restaurant eating dinner, and we're kind of saying, did that really just happen? I say we're just walking along in the desert, and Paul McCartney pops up and walks right in front of us. I mean, that's how most people see a tarantula. That's how I saw one of the Beatles. And not even my favorite one. I like Ringo.
You know, whenever you talk about the Beatles, you always have to talk about the Beach Boys. At the time the Beatles broke, the Beach Boys were their main competition, but the Beach Boys were America's band. Formed by 3 brothers from Hawthorne, California, Dennis, Carl, and Brian Wilson, who joined up with their cousin Mike Love and a friend from school named Al Jardine. The Beach Boys defined American teenagers in the early 1960s. And unlike the Beatles, who were exotic, they had weird haircuts. Their manager was a confirmed bachelor named Brian Epstein. The Beach Boys were clean-cut, well-scrubbed, and how's this for American? Their manager was their dad, Murry Wilson. And unlike Brian Epstein, Murry Wilson was out of his fucking mind. A domineering, manipulative motherfucker who would take breaks from psychologically terrorizing his children to physically terrorize them. He liked to punish his kids by doing stuff like taking out his glass eye and making them stare into the empty socket. Brian Wilson is deaf in his right ear, and rumor has it, it's because Murray hit him in the head with a 2x4. But that didn't stop Brian from writing songs like Fun, Fun, Fun and Good Vibrations. Murray fancied himself a musician, and it drove him crazy that Brian was called a genius in the press while he was ignored. But don't take my word for it. Here's the real Murray giving the real Brian shit during the recording of Help Me Rhonda.
Brian, I'm a genius too. Let's go, huh?
Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda.
Loosen up, Al. Rhonda, you look so fine. Okay? Loosen up and be happy. Be happy. Be happy.
I am so happy. You can't believe it.
So you're big stars. Let's fight, huh? Come on, you got any guts? Let's see it. I don't care how many people are here.
I got 1 ear left and your big loud voice is killing me.
Brian, forget who you are, will you? What's the matter? You made too much money, buddy?
No.
Let's sing from your heart, so let's go.
All right. Sing from your
I know
pocketbook.
I know you're not talked this way much, but I'm your father. I've protected you for 22 years, but I can't go on if you're not going to listen to an intelligent man.
We would like to record under an atmosphere of calmness.
I
And you're
love
not
you. Your
presenting that.
mother loves you.
Okay.
I try to give you tips, and you think because you've had a few hits, you got it made. Son, success has never comes easy. You have to fight for it all the time. I'm sorry, dear. We'll never come to another recording session.
What follows now are excerpts from an actual letter that Murry wrote to Brian in 1965. I hereby bring you, Dear Brian, a letter from father to son. Brian, you were a wonderful young boy. And when I was strict from time to time, it was only because I felt it was my duty as a father to give you the security that a punishment gives. You see, Brian, your mother was trying to raise you boys like girls. Oh, from time to time she took a coat hanger to you when she thought you were doing something wrong, but none of her correction was too effective because you could only compare it to the more strict and violent punishment that I could render as the stronger human being. Brian, I love your mother, but she's weak. And the fact that we are somehow inexplicably growing apart might not mean anything to you, but it means something to me, okay? Okay, buddy, just saying. I do know one thing. I can hold my head up in Hollywood, and you can't. You've broken contracts with me, Brian. You recorded on Jan and Dean's record, which was an absolutely treacherous act, not only against the Beach Boys, but against your own family. Now, you may not think this is important, and you might not have any conscience about anyone else's feelings, and that's okay. That's okay, buddy. But if you do, might I suggest that you consult your own attorney, or try to find one with some morals, and maybe also a psychiatrist to try to unravel your thinking in these areas. Okay, buddy? Brian? 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 Brian?
When I first moved to L.A., all of the people who were in 70s TV movies were rollerblading by my window. It was like the NBC mystery movie, is what it was.
Ben Gazzara.
Yeah, Ben Gazzara. Here's Paula Britt. Here's
Julie
Meredith
London.
Baxter Birney. Everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Here's David Birney.
David Birney and Meredith Baxter Birney, by the way, if you saw the Oprah, and I did because I have a wife.
Oh, yeah.
David Birney is apparently a colossal asshole.
Oh, yeah.
And Meredith Baxter Birney is now gay, almost in defiance of David Birney not being a woman. I don't think it has anything to do with anything. Now, let me be very clear here. I have never met Meredith Baxter Birney.
Right.
But I'm going to say with utter confidence, I know why she's gay a lot more than she does. Well, and they were recounting the stories about him on Oprah with his two daughters with her in the audience. And then Oprah basically has the daughters stand up and tell shitty stories about him. And then turns and goes, David was offered to be a part of the show. He didn't want to comment.
He didn't want to comment, but he did want to sit there hung in effigy for some reason.
He did offer to shoot me in the eye with a squirt gun full of AIDS blood. I don't know why, but that was his offer.
And I'll go with you to the studio, guys. I'm just not going to talk. You do what you want. I'll be in the kitchen. I shouldn't say that, but really, my sister has one of those stories.
But despite that, people should know your sister is George Papard.
Yes, and she's still bitter over Banachek. People remember the A-Team, but they don't remember Banachek.
And they call him Bounce-A-Check, and that drives him insane.
I was cleared of those charges. And then he has Mickey Rooney flashbacks from Breakfast at Tiffany's. There's an Asian man, but it turns out to be Mickey Rooney.
By the way, just as an aside, Breakfast at Tiffany's is this iconic film. And then you watch it. Its rep is so much better than it is. It's Pretty Woman. It's about, it's something I hate. A lovable hooker.
Right.
Right. And then you get Mickey Rooney in the middle of it with this incredibly dated, ridiculous Asian. It's from another movie. It's like from the Nutty Professor.
One of the worst things that's ever been made.
And it's in the middle of this supposedly like classic movie. It's like, it would be like in the middle of like Casablanca. Oh, here comes Farting John. Okay. Hi there, Rick.
There was this guy, Dick Shepard. I think he was one of the producers of that movie.
Yeah, and his motto was Dick Shepard before he dicks you.
Anytime anytime you have a dick name, you know. But he had this thing where Henry Mancini came down and they played the song for him on a harmonica. He plays Moon River, and they said, we love everything except the song. We do not care for the song. These were the studio notes.
You know, there is a similar set of notes for, of all things, A Charlie Brown Christmas from the network. And I think just for fun, I'll have my friend Paul Greenberg tell you about it.
CBS, the network that made Charlie Brown Christmas, first of all, wanted a laugh track. Okay, can you imagine a laugh track on a Charlie Brown Christmas? Because I cannot. And they hated the jazz music. Okay, who doesn't own that album? Everybody loves it. They thought it was awful. All right, and they wanted to cut Linus's speech about the true meaning of Christmas, which is the heart of the entire special. They thought it was too religious. Right? Exactly. So they didn't want to air it. They didn't want to air the special, but they agreed to air it just once, and they said, you know, obviously because they had spent so much money on it, they said it will never air again, which I don't believe it has aired again, has it? I'm not sure. And despite being about commercialization of Christmas, which is, you know, what the special is about, when Charlie Brown slides down a hill and he hits a sign and goes into a pond, the sign used to read Coca-Cola. They changed it to read, you know, Frozen Pond or something, I think. All true.
There was a guy in Marina Del Rey who dated all of these classic Hollywood starlets. He was an actor. And he dated Judy Garland. And he dated her in 1963 when she was doing a show for CBS with Jerry Van Dyke. He didn't work out so good.
That show, I believe, was called Barbiturates and Sunshine.
That's right. That's right. That was before Color Me Barbara. That was the original working title. And so he's dating her.
I Dream of Dragons.
She has a Lazy Susan full of pills in the house. So anyway, the long story short is she's doing the show, and he goes to have dinner with her in her house in Rockingham with OJ. OJ's nearby.
Right.
And there's a picture of a guy on a piano, and it's JFK. It says, "To Judy with love from Jack." So he says, "All right, smartass, who should I have as my first guest on my show?" The guy points to the picture saying, him, meaning John F. Kennedy. She said, "I can't call him. He's the president of the goddamn United States." And he said, "I read if you yell to a star, they'll do it." So I said, "Call him." So she picks up the phone, and she must have dialed, and he gets on the phone. And she said, "Jack, this is Judy Garland. I know this is really ridiculous, but I'm doing a special for CBS, and is there any way that you could come on that show? It would be amazing to have me." He can't. He's on his way to Dallas.
Oops.
Oh.
So this is the kind of story that this guy told, whether it was true or not. But you hear these stories, and it's like, wow, that's great.
There is an audio tape of a phone call that just surfaced recently of JFK reaming out this poor Air Force press officer. Apparently, when Jackie Kennedy was about to give birth to their baby, I guess the Air Force thought it would be nice if they tricked out a room just for the First Lady. And the president thought it was a less than wise idea. Well, here's the call. It's crazy.
The Post this morning?
Yes, sir. I'm looking.
See that fellow's picture by the bed?
Yes, sir.
And you see that furniture they bought from Jordan Marsh? What the hell do they let the reporters in there for? Are they crazy up there? Now you know what's going to do. Any congressman's going to get up and say, Christ, if they can throw $5,000 away on this, let's cut them another $1 billion. You just sank the Air Force budget. You're crazy up there. Are they crazy? That silly bastard with his picture next to the bed?
I'm appalled, but...
Well, I'm appalled, too.
All right, sir.
Then I want that fella's incompetent who had his picture taken next to Mrs. Kennedy's bed, if that's what it is. I mean, he's a silly bastard. I wouldn't have him running a cat house. You better look into it, and especially when you told me that they hadn't spent a cent.
Well, sir, this is obviously...
Well, this is obviously a fuck-out, sir.
Even now, it's hard to think of those people like as human beings. So I think that Martin Luther King, you think he's writing the I Have a Dream speech, but he has kids. He's still a parent.
Right.
So he has kids, and he's writing there, Coretta, I am writing the I Have a Dream speech. Get those kids out of here. I have grape jelly on my speech. No, but I would think that something like that may have happened. And, of course, the worst Dr. King you've ever heard just now. Coretta!
I thought that he had taken over your body like in a seance.
But, I mean, think of that. You know, he's writing the most amazing speech. He's still got kids. He still has to come home sometime.
Yeah, he's just working it out.
He's working it out. I have a scheme.
Yes, it just goes. I have a beam.
What rhymes?
And he can't even get dream. I have a deem, geem.
Oh my God! I was so close to it, I didn't see it.
I have steam, and this steam will free us.
I have some ideas.
I have a loose concept for a potential way for humans to behave.
Excuse me, Martin, honey, it's not.
By the way, my Martin Luther King is a Southern sheriff. I wonder, did you know, this is interesting, not a lot of people know this, this case got to the Supreme Court in 1974. The producers of Blackula, the movie, sued General Mills over Count Chocula. No.
Wouldn't that be great? We'll now hear testimony.
I think it's interesting that Count Chocula does not have an afro. He is completely like an English guy with a tan.
Count Chocula.
Yeah. Let's be honest. We all know who Count Chocula is. Can we grow up? I have a dream that General Mills will have the courage to give Count Chocula Afrocentric features. And we all know Frankenberry is just a retarded boy, and it's a terrible thing to mock. The children were writing my speech again. I have my kid's speech with my speech.
There's grape jelly on my I Have a Dream speech. Coretta.
Mr. King, it's Robert Kennedy calling from the president's office.
Yes. What is it, Robert?
We were very upset to hear you attack Frankenberry. He was very popular here in the family.
You people would like Frankenberry. He's got no soul, nor does your brother. I saw him dance, and I was not pleased.
He is a very bad back.
Here's a really weird story about the Kennedys that is pretty widely reported. Joseph Kennedy Sr. and Rosemary Kennedy were the parents of Jack Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Teddy Kennedy. Jack, Bobby, and Teddy had a sister named Rosemary, named after their mother, who nobody saw. She had emotional issues. No one knows exactly what it was, but she would have these rages. She was very violent. She would take off at night, and they'd just find her roaming the streets. In her early 20s, Joseph Kennedy had an experimental lobotomy done to see if it would fix the problem. And apparently it went as well as Jack Nicholson's did in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
And that was in the Kennedy miniseries, too.
Oh, yeah, with the one with Greg Kinnear?
Yes.
I didn't see it. We're not allowed to when you've lived on Cape Cod. But, because the family had this relationship with people with emotional issues, mental challenges, that contributed to their founding the Special Olympics.
Well, that's nice.
Yes. But here's a story that's not nice. This story is so creepy. I read this in a book, and it was so bizarre that I actually looked it up. And it's been reported as true, and it's one of my favorite ones. Before President Kennedy was assassinated, his father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., suffered a major stroke and was largely incapacitated for the rest of his life. After the president is assassinated, he kept the flag that was draped over his coffin. Joseph Kennedy Sr. kept that flag in his bedroom. One night, Joseph Kennedy Sr. is in bed, and his nurse, who had the unfortunate name Rita Dallas, I know, it's crazy.
Bizarre.
This is the story, as reported. She comes in, thinks he's cold, so drapes the flag over him in bed like a blanket. He wakes up in the middle of the night, sees that he's laying under an American flag, thinks that he's died, and loses his shit. Which is just, I do hope it's true. They're our royalty. The cereal that I always remembered was just amazing was Cookie Crisp, which was just a bowl of cookies. Has anyone here been so depressed they ate a bowl of cookies? That was sort of training for a food disorder later in life. Now, these are miniature cereal-shaped cookies. When you get older and you enter into a period of prolonged sexual dysfunction and chemical dependency, then you'll graduate to a real bowl of cookies.
My mother took me to see Summer of 42 and Klute on a double feature. I was like 11. And she had no idea what it was. People just went to movies.
Yeah.
There was no rating system. It was a little weird.
I saw The Graduate when I was 9.
9.
I was 3 when it came out, but it was on TV when I was 9, and I remember watching it, not knowing what it was about. But I was very excited because I knew that during it there would be a commercial for Planet of the Apes that was coming on soon. That movie, The Graduate, if you watch it now, this is the message. It's so funny. People talk about the baby boom generation. They changed the country. And this was one of the flagship movies that spoke for that generation.
Right.
Here's the message of The Graduate. You can have any girl you want, even if you fucked her mother. You just have to stalk her enough.
I guess that's true.
He did. She says, get away from me. So he follows her to school. He just stalks her down.
Right.
He wears her down. Now, when you watch it now, it's like, this isn't good. I had, years ago, an over-enthusiastic fan. And I ended up having to talk to Gavin DeBecker about it. And who said The Graduate is one of the key problems that they have, because a lot of people just thought that's how you do it. If you love somebody, you just got to hunt them down.
Wow.
Stick-to-itiveness.
That's amazing. And then I think Buck Henry, I don't know, maybe Uncle Al, the kitty's pal. It all kind of ties together, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's funny. You're talking about the sketch on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Of all the things on Saturday Night Live, those were the ones that nowadays it's so completely wrong. For those of you who don't remember, in the original 76, 77, 78, he played a pedophile uncle that would come to babysit and completely and nowadays you watch it on the DVD and you're like, this is fucking horrifying.
Yeah, it is amazing that they got away with that. How times have changed and attitudes.
Alex Bennett, your friend and mine,
sure,
radio host, and I will say internet radio pioneer.
Oh, yeah.
He really did, in the late 80s, early 90s, say this is all going to be online in 15 years.
Wow, he
and,
was
He
prescient.
did. No, he was very
smart.
He was very, very prescient.
Mm-hmm.
Buck Henry and Alex Bennett were friends in New York, and Alex told a story. In New York in the 70s, they're at a slave auction at a B&D club.
And most people would stop right there. But no.
Right. And somebody in that garb comes up to them and says, "Are you Buck Henry?" And Buck Henry says, "Not tonight." I had, on my 30th birthday, my girlfriend at the time, not my wife,
right,
but a very good friend of my wife's, took me to a bar on Santa Monica Boulevard that was an S&M bar to get spanked for my birthday.
Okay.
And I said, I probably shouldn't be here. I'm on the TV.
Yeah.
And she said, quite intelligently, who here would care? And I said, good point.
Wow.
So there I was, getting professionally flogged for my birthday. And my girlfriend at the time was standing facing me. And a couple came up. The guy looked like Trent Reznor, and the girl looked like Trent Reznor. And they walked up literally 3 inches from my face, and the guy went, "Oh my God, you're Dana Gould. You're like our favorite comedian." And I was like, "Well, hi." And I was like, "Wow, nice to meet you. How are you?" And yet, when my parents hit me, I did not get erect, not one time.
It's interesting that the way that family just doesn't do it for you. Did you really get beaten up a lot?
Oh, sure.
The brothers did.
As any kid. Yeah.
Regular, not crazy. They didn't tie you to a barn.
Not
or
like
something.
emergency room, but no, they had a thing called Japanese torture that I don't think has anything to do with the Japanese, but they would sit on my chest with my arms pinned and just slap my face back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And what made it funny was when they were doing it, they would go, torture, torture.
Wow. That's brothers.
Yeah, that's brothers. It wasn't anything that I'm not, honestly, it was just healthy. I mean, my brother Kevin and I, we hated each other. I threw scissors at him.
Wow.
He slammed my hand in a door. He shot me with a BB gun.
Jesus.
Just like a shot in the chest with a BB gun. The fastest recorded instance of a trigger being pulled and then immediately, "Don't tell Dad."
Wow. You bet your... And did your father find out? Of course he
I don't
found out.
remember.
I feel like I've been riding around with the emergency brake on for about 45 years. It's very hard to be depressed, And the thing about depression is you're depressing what wants to come up. All these things just want to come up and out. They're not thoughts. They're not meant to do anything. They don't mean anything. It's emotion. It's energy in motion.
I'm not trying to be funny here. It is like vomit. It's trying to get up and out.
Yes.
And people who repress it, it's like, I'm not going to throw up. No. Throw up.
And then you're done.
Going back, you feel better.
You feel better. And then something else will come. But you're supposed to be open enough to have these things go where they want.
You know, when you grow up in Massachusetts and you're taught to worship the Kennedys, one of their big mottos was, Kennedys don't cry. And you just assume that that's the way to behave. You know, I don't care what has happened to me. I'm not going to cry. Everyone I've ever known has been shot in the head, but I'm not a crybaby. Maybe if they, let it out a little bit, their lives wouldn't have been so messed up. Maybe if JFK cried a little bit, he wouldn't have had to tag every secretary in the White House. Every week there's some new story. The White House released details today of an inkwell, bathtub drain, and a jelly donut, all three of which conducted long-term sexual affairs with President Kennedy during his term in office. He did have that amazing voice, though. Just the way he spoke, he could have been an amazing stand-up comic. He had that down.
Man goes to a party. He forgets his wallet there. He awakens the next day hungover and can only remember the house had a red door and a gold toilet seat. He knocks on every red door in town until he reaches the final one. The man gives him his wallet and said, "You were so drunk, how did you recall where I lived?" The man said, "I recalled your red door and your gold toilet seat." The man grabs him by the shirt and says, "You're the guy who pooped in my tuba." And now, please welcome the next act, a very funny comic, Stu Gillum.
You have to do the things that you're afraid of all the time. And that's one of the things that you only learn as you get older. We're like, I'm going to do this because I'm afraid of it. And it's not because it's particularly good for me to do, but after I've done it, I will have known that I could do something that I was afraid of, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
You take the power away from
And I can remind myself of that the next time I do something like that. I have a template. But the other thing, too, is just saying to myself, okay, I'm afraid. I admit it. Here I am. But, I'm going to just be here and see what happens. And it goes away so much quicker than if you say, oh, I'm a bad person for being afraid, or I should try to control my fear, or I can't let anybody else here know how I feel, or I'm not okay for being this way, or I'm different than other people. The whole case that I make,
When your child was born.
Yes, sir.
Clearly there's some happiness involved.
One of the happiest moments of my life.
But also a crushing responsibility of, oh, shit.
I never really had that. I had that about myself when I look in the mirror. But I never had that with my kid.
I had the weirdest feeling when I met my daughter. My oldest daughter was 53 weeks old when she, as we say, joined her forever family. And I remember the first time I held her, looking down into her eyes, and had two thoughts. One was, does this poor thing think I'm going to take care of her? Because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I just had this horrible image of her sitting in a high chair going hungry while I tried to watch a Twilight Zone marathon. And the other thing I thought was, I could totally kill somebody if they tried to hurt her. That's another great thing about kids. They really do give you the sense that you could murder. You ever do this? You meet just a tool, just a douchebag, and the world's full of them. And you think, you were an awesome 2-year-old. When did you become a D-bag? What happened? Did a rock hit you? What happened?
Right. Yeah. That's actually a great
I guess what I'm asking is, who let the douche out? Come on, everybody.
Boom, boom. No, but that...
Jock jams.
But that is really...
Emotional jock jams. Who
Kicking
let
them
the
out.
douche out? Boom. They said about Richard Nixon, he would have been so easy to fix Had anyone loved him, wow, it would have been so easy to fix. But he wouldn't have been the president because he didn't have that yawning chasm. And that's a very interesting thing that a lot of those people don't understand. It's like, I don't think a healthy person wants to be the president. I think it's just, there's just such a ginormous hole in your psyche, and to be that driven.
That driven, right.
You got to be making up for something.
It's a balance way out of, these are not balanced individuals.
Yeah.
They couldn't be.
As I've said before, one thing you never hear is, now that I've got all my emotional shit together, I can concentrate on becoming a ventriloquist.
And there's no self-actualized ventriloquist. That's the problem. And it would be a great act if you had it. How are you, Billy? Fine. How are you? Just fine. I enjoy spending time with you. I enjoy spending time with you. You're my favorite person. You're my favorite person.
You're just wood, and I'm projecting into you a lot of the person I wish I was. I know.
You're always so nice to the nice people.
the nice people. And they always say the nice people, don't they?
I feel your guilt when you masturbate into your wife's conditioner. We don't talk about that on stage, Billy.
Here in the U.S. of America, there's no monarchy for the people to worship. Celebrities are our royalty, and worship them we do. From Brad and Angelina to Tom and Katie, the list is endless. But we must also take time to acknowledge those who came before. They may not be as famous, but they are nonetheless also in show business.
I think everyone at some time or another fantasizes about being a movie star. I'm sure some people would sign a pact with the devil to become one. This is the story of a man who looks like he did just that. For he became a cinema success for the most unfortunate possible reason. But the fact of the matter is, he never set out to be in movies in the first place. Rondo Hatton was born in Hagerstown, Maryland, to two school teachers. After his father died, the family moved to Tampa, Florida. In high school, Rondo was voted most handsome in his class, and after graduating, he worked as a sports writer for the Tampa Tribune. Several years later, Rondo's features began to change. His eyes started to swell. His hands became larger. He went to the doctor and was diagnosed with a pituitary disorder known as acromegaly. In short order, Rondo became severely disfigured. Needless to say, he was upset and eventually spiraled into a deep, suicidal depression. What came to his rescue? A little fella named Hollywood. In 1930, a movie called Hell Harbor filmed in Tampa, and the director spotted Rondo, who was covering the film for the newspaper, and gave him a small part. Flattered by the attention, Rondo moved to Hollywood, giving truth to the expression, when life gives you acromegaly, make acromegaly aid. Rondo worked steadily, playing thugs and goons in B-movies for the better part of a decade. And then in 1944, at the height of his disfigurement, he signed a deal with Universal Studios, playing the lead villain in the film Sherlock Holmes and the Pearl Death. He played a mute monster called the Creeper, and the Creeper was a smash. The public demanded more Rondo. They said, more Rondo. Universal turned on its PR machine, saying Rondo's physical appearance was due to mustard gas exposure in World War I, an out-and-out lie. But Rondo starred in 3 movies over the next 18 months. The last one, called The Brute Man, was almost an autobiography, telling the story of a handsome college athlete scarred and turned into a monster by an accident. Rondo died before the film was released, but his star never faded. His famous face lives on. In fact, the main villain in Disney's The Rocketeer is visually based on Rondo Hatton, as are characters in both Judge Dredd and the Goon comics. And every year, the Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Award is presented. The trophy? A bust of guess who? This from the website The Human Marvels by J. Titmus Pednow has been the story of Rondo Hatton, also in show business.
I went to a therapist once. I'm not making a word of this up. He was an inner child specialist.
I referred you to this therapist.
You may have.
I think I did.
You may have. Well, so I'm talking, and he said, well, yeah, tell me more about that. And I said, well, I'm pretty angry about this, I'm angry about that, and I'm frustrated. And he said, well, go pick a puppet from the basket and put the puppet on your lap And I continue to tell him stuff. And he says, okay.
Start fucking the puppet.
And you're upset.
You're not a doctor.
And you're upset, and he says, tell him.
Oh, boy.
And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, tell the puppet. You mean talk to him and don't talk to you? Yeah, tell him. And so I'm sitting there. I'm a grown person, and I'm sitting there saying, well, I feel really angry about my childhood. And he says, no, tell him. Go ahead. Tell him. And I put it into a movie. I put it into the scene I wrote from a movie. It's me trying to break up with my dummy. It's really done like couples therapy. And he said, we've talked about separation for quite a while now. I said, he punishes and controls. And I said, it's time to separate. He says, you tell him that.
Can I give you his initials and will you tell me if I'm right?
Yeah, go ahead.
BK?
Yes.
We went to I think I referred you to this therapist.
You may have.
I think I did.
You may have.
That's hilarious.
We now return to Dear Brian, a letter from father to son. Part 2.
Brian. The Beach Boys cannot go on forever, Brian. You know this. Brian. I didn't mind when you took practically all the credit for mixing Little Deuce Coupe. It's okay. I didn't mind when you and Gary Usher conned me out of a recording session and then let me pay the bill. It's all right. But the financial success of the Beach Boys has given each and every one of you guys a sense of false security, and you're starting to take calculated risks. And I'm referring, of course, to things like drinking, lascivious behavior, and statutory rape. That's all I'm saying. You're all a bunch of drunken rapists. That's all. Okay? Okay, buddy. So, I've come to the final decision that all three of you boys should be taken out of the music business. I believe the best thing for you to do is to sit down with your attorneys and have a serious talk about the terrible things you've done, and when that meeting is finished, you dissolve the Beach Boys as a group. I love you, but I am crushed at how you turned out. The only thing I'm trying to get across to you is that you are a dishonest statutory rapist who should be taken out of the music business. And I will accept my share of responsibility in the sense that I absolutely stood by and was there while your mother failed us. Why that woman is divorcing me is a mystery.
Here's what my father told me as a kid. Every day, you wake up and eat shit. And if you don't, when they're standing over the box that holds your rotting corpse, they'll have nothing to talk about. So you're saying there's another way to go through life?
No, I'm saying that pretty much is it for me, too. Actually, Jewish people, when they die, they actually eat. So they're actually in we don't open the casket. And what's in the casket is actually a Lazy Susan with bread. That's inside. You take that with you.
Shiva is all about eating.
You know, it's such a great ritual because all you do is tell stories and people eat and they have laughs and they honor the person.
For the Goyim in the audience, explain what Shiva is.
A Shiva is 7 days of mourning, but what you do is you stay at your house usually and you invite people over and you have a lot of food and people tell stories and they visit about the dearly departed, and that's what it is.
And you know who wrote a book about it? William Shatner.
Did he really write a book about Shiva?
Yes. Because when his wife passed away, he sat Shiva.
Yeah.
Tech Shiva, it's called. No, I think he did write a book about it.
I was on radio with him once, and he said, the traffic coming over here was absolutely holocaustic. He used the word Holocaust as a verb to discuss traffic.
He lives not far from here. One of the weirdest celebrity experiences I ever had was, I always see him at our Rite Aid.
Oh, boy.
And not long after his wife died, tragically, I saw him walking out of the Rite Aid. I parked my car, and I see Shatner. And I'm like, oh, there he is. And people have a vibe about him. I used to see Robert Blake at our Whole Foods all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just like, hey, where's the snap peas? See the murderer? right over there. And he does have like a vibe like, oh yeah, you definitely killed somebody. There's a weird, spooky vibe to Beretta. So I see Shatner coming out of the Rite Aid, and he is putting a 99-cent styrofoam cooler into the trunk of a $3 billion Mercedes. And only in Los Angeles, a guy drives past him and says, without stopping his car, "Sorry to hear about your wife." And Shatner just looks up and goes, "Thank you." It was such a bizarre... "Thank you. I am also sorry about my wife."
This is the weirdest place in the world. I saw little Richard buying Girl Scout cookies in front of Aunt Kizzy's back porch. Not kidding.
There's this great story that little Richard told on some documentary where he was going,
I knew that I had to give my life to Jesus. I had to give my life to Jesus. And I looked down and I realized I was wearing all this jewelry. I had on rings. I had on bracelets. I had a big watch. I had a necklace, and I just said, "Jesus, I can't do it. You have to take me. Jesus, you have to take me." So I went to this bridge over this river, and I just took off all my jewels. I said, "Jesus, I'm going to give this all to you." And I took off my rings, and I took off my bracelets, and I took off my necklaces, and I took off my watch, and I threw them into the river, and I said, "Jesus, take me. Jesus, take me." And I felt the Lord come into my life. I felt Jesus come into my life. I felt Jesus into my soul. He saved my soul. But I do look back on that time and I think, oh, I wish I knew where that river led out today.
everybody has that voice of doubt in their head that they're not good enough. And I think what you're doing is you're creating a terrible dad in your mind. You create a dad in your head that isn't very supportive. And the terrible thing about that is that little Richard's kids have that voice in their head, but it's little Richard's voice.
I don't see why you want to go to law school. You ain't going to be no lawyer. You should just get a job at the tennis court picking up the balls. That's all you're good for. Woo! They're bright green, so even you can see them. Woo! Why do you want to ask a pretty girl out? No pretty girl going to dance with you. I just sit home in the dark and play with yourself. Woo!
That's what I have. It makes it easier to ignore when the voice of doubt in your head is little Richard.
Why do you want to do a podcast? You ain't going to do no podcast. You just a Johnny-come-lately. You spent too much time on The Simpsons and you lost it. And now you're trying to get it back and everybody thinks it's pathetic. You ain't no Mark Maron. Woo!
You know, when you hear that voice in your head, you just have to think, nope, I'm just going to ignore it. It's just little Richard. The dream is always the same. It's raining, and I'm looking down on a group of people carrying a coffin out of a funeral home, loading it into the back of a waiting hearse. A woman appears at the back of the line and places her hand on the coffin, and I see instantly that it is my wife, and that the funeral that I'm watching is my own. I'm not alarmed by this. I'm not concerned about where I am, if this is heaven or hell. I've achieved a state of pure being. I simply am. There's difficulty loading me into the back of the hearse. The weather has snarled traffic, and there's some concern about the delayed departure of the procession. I see my wife lean down and whisper to my coffin, one last, hurry up. You know I hate being late, and we're late all the time. I see this instantly for what it is. A small, desperate attempt at feeling natural. A flailing swipe at one last normal moment on this least normal of days. I take it in without judgment. Emotions have left me. The journey of my body is over, and I am now at one with nature. And still my wife's words echo in my ear, and it starts to kind of bug me. In my new state, I wordlessly communicate with a sparrow flying nearby, and in 1/1,000,000th of the time it would take to say it, I simply communicate with it. That woman, the blonde woman in the black coat. Could you poop on her, please? And then, with the simplicity and immediacy of an email arriving in an inbox, the bird responds. Blonde woman, black coat. Check. I watch as the sparrow banks and rolls, swooping down towards the hearse like a German Stuka bomber in a World War II documentary film. He releases his payload, but it goes wide, missing my wife completely and splattering across the lid of my coffin, which is then loaded into the hearse, the door slamming shut behind it. For no one saw this occur. My wife, who would have been in a perfect spot to witness this atrocity had she been paying attention, had momentarily turned away to speak to her mother, saying, "Yes, I know we're late. I'm doing everything I can to move people along." She then turned back, just as the hearse's door was slammed shut, with me being sent on my way towards my final resting place, with what looks like half a vanilla milkshake spilled across my coffin lid. I again communicate with the sparrow. "Way to go, dingus. Who taught you how to shit? Stevie Wonder?" And the sparrow responds, communicating with the simplicity and immediacy of an email arriving in an inbox. "Why don't you suck my big bird cock?"
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley, with Jake Posner behind the board. Engineering by Brent Butler. Internet junk by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing, effects, and everything else by Jolinda Palmer. Hey, if you like the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com. Tom Kenny speaking.
I could totally eat more cobbler.
Or hot pudding.